Lieutenant Levy always goes on and on about his conspiracy theories. Rutherford had a cave kid with Dr. T, and Tandy didn't love peeing in the corner of a turbo lift. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4, Episode 8, entitled Caves, written by Ben Rogers, directed by Meg Lloyd, and what a coincidence, what a thrill. We have director Meg Lloyd joining us today. How are you, Meg?
Hello. Oh, doing great. Always happy to be on Seventh Rule.
I love having
We
you.
love this episode. Yeah, this was a great one. Another great one.
Nice, nice, nice.
And this coming from an expert on cave episodes, by the way. Cirroc has done more than one of his cave episodes in the past.
Yeah, I found myself stuck in a cave before. And it's always a miserable thing.
So were your caves sets, or did you get to go to like a California cave location?
We had cave sets. So part of it was done at a location, but that was more of the exterior shots leading up to the cave. Once we actually were in the cave, it was done at the studio. With with those rocks that are like sponges, you can throw them at each other, but they look really heavy. And so I've had moments in my moments in caves, also with the smoke sometimes being billowed in with some smoke machine. So we've had cave story, but this was great because this combined something that I really like too in storytelling, particularly all storytelling, but it works well in Star Trek as well. Is the flashbacks, and I love flashbacks, and this felt like just a bunch of flashbacks to different things that happened in the past, and I'm always excited about those. I don't know why I love flashback episodes so much, but this was one of those. And it gave us the combination of the cave trope on Star Trek and some of the flashback. Also gave us really good character development and building. What were you trying to set off right away with this? I mean, obviously this is a comedy, so we're doing jokes and the cave tropes. But what were some of the things you wanted to accomplish in this episode?
Trying to figure out how we wanted to shoot the caves was a big one. You mentioned having an exterior location and then sets for the interiors. We really wanted to send up both the actual making of Star Trek as well as the storytelling in this episode. So originally we thought that we would start everybody outside the cave and we would use the same exterior location, sort of as a nod to we shoot a real cave for the outside and then we go in. But because we had so many stories to tell in this episode, we decided to just start everybody inside the cave entrance. So one of the things I love the most about this episode is the backgrounds are the exact same line art for all 4 locations. They're just done in slightly different colors. So it's like we've just used the same cave set for every flashback story. And our art team has redressed it for the
that
story we
so
need it to be.
Star Trek. We're using the same cave set that they just have in the corner of Studio G or 13 or whatever.
I had no idea because I didn't pay attention to that. I'm glad you kind of highlighted that for us because I didn't really notice that was the same cave just being redressed.
The color makes a huge difference. I think the places where it's most clear is everybody does enter the cave in that same little area with the entrance off screen, with the idea that if it were a live action set, we would be faking the entrance with like lights flashing off stage for lightning. So you never actually see the storm that Boimler and Levy are running from, or you never actually see like how T'Ana and Rutherford made it through their whole labyrinth to get there. But it just sort of kickstarts each story being the same way. And it is subtle enough that it's not supposed to be the main joke of the episode. But it's fun enough that, again, repeat viewings, something fun that you can catch.
It's all very meta. Kind of like when Rutherford mentions the flat floors of caves. He's like, all the floors have flat caves. And Boimler says all the caves look the same. It's all very meta. It's all very inside jokes for Star Trek fans. This was the your third episode that you directed this season, but this one had a very different tone in a lot of ways to any of the previous episodes. One was that it was a sweeter episode. It was nice. It was gather round, let's have a flashback storytelling episode. And the other difference in tonality was that it was 5 different stories, 4 flashbacks and one underlying story. Was that more challenging in a way? Was it more fun? What was that about?
So one of the really fun things about this episode having those 4 stories is I have 4 storyboard artists on my team. So I basically, at the beginning of the episode, I'm like, Nick, you're Delta Shift, Jean, you're the Graflax, Marcy, you're the Turbo Lift, and Spencer, you're doing the Vendorians. And so it was really fun to let the artists each go and tell a whole and complete story, because when you divvy up the episode, that's not always the case, especially with just a longer A story and B story. So it was fun to give everyone kind of a short Trek film to do on their own inside the episode as a whole. And then after we got I talked a little bit last time about the process of boarding, that the storyboard artists will have it for a while. And when they finalize it, that's when Barry, the supervising director, and I show it to Mike, and he gives his first feedback on it. And Mike's initial feedback when he saw our first cut of the episode was, you made the caves too nice. And I think if you would compare the original boards to what we have, the backgrounds themselves don't look all that different, but we were definitely setting up the cameras like it was a much bigger space, like it was a much wider space. And Mike was like, I need these to be shittier original series Star Trek caves instead of these beautiful modern Star Trek caves you've given us. So I think one of the biggest challenges on this episode was going through and restaging a lot of the cave scenes. Not necessarily redrawing things, but grouping the characters in closer together, having more characters in one shot at a time, bringing the ceilings down in a lot of the shots, so the sets themselves would feel much smaller, even though we didn't fully redesign the caves from scratch.
Wow. Question for you about, last time, well, a few episodes ago, you gave us the Moopsie character. And, I really love the Moopsie. And in this episode, we got, is it Graflax?
The Graflax, yes.
Yes. And I really enjoyed that character design. So there's my Graflax right there. And
amazing.
Yeah, I did my Moopsie and my Graflax. But I wanted to ask you, when you're drawing original unseen kind of creatures, aliens, I don't know if the Vendorians is something we've seen before in the past. Maybe Ryan knows more than I do. But when you're drawing these kinds of characters, what is the baseline for creating new characters? How does the approval work for, people saying, yes, this is what we want to use?
So character designs and any new designs we have from the episode will primarily come from our visual development and our art department. So they get, and about a week or 2 before the episode comes out, the art team will get the outline of the episode or the full script if it's ready, at that point in time. And I'll go through with Mike, with Nolan, who's our art lead, and with Barry, and we'll call out certain things in the episode we know we definitely want the board artists to have references for before we start. And our design team will come up with 2 to 5 different versions of, new characters, new creatures, for Mike to look at and choose his favorite. So we did get a couple different versions of, here's what a Graflax could look like. Mike narrowed in kind of on the direction he wanted the most. So when we storyboard, we don't always start with finalized designs, but we do start with pretty good reference for what Mike is thinking of for the new creatures that we're getting at any point in time. And if you want to know where we saw the Vendorians before,
yes,
the animated series, right?
Yes,
was it just one episode?
Yep, they are from the animated series, and we saw them at the very beginning of season 1, in the episode Envoy, season 1, episode 2, when Mariner and Boimler end up in Little Kronos tracking down General Corinne. There's
Oh, wow.
there's a shape-shifting Vendorian there who's like, now I'm a little boy. So we had a not rudimentary, but we had an initial build. Like the animation team had already figured out how a character like this would move. I think there were a couple different options for what the alien in the sequence could be. Like, do we want to come up with a new alien? Do we want to pull something legacy? And I'm really glad we pulled the Vendorians because they're some of my favorite animation in this episode. Yeah. I
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts. Of course, like a tentacle can just move. With a limb, you kind of just have like a hinge here and a hinge here, but with a tentacle, there's like so many different posings you can do with it. So Spencer Johnson, who was our board artist for that sequence, he had a great time like staging all the different, how do we group so many of them? How do we tell them apart from each other? Their mouths aren't moving. How do we differentiate which one is talking? A lot of fun stuff with the Vendorians in those sequences. So I'm really glad they ended up in the episode.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the second episode of the first season, but I did remember that they were from animated series. And then when I just looked it up, yeah, I saw that it was also in Lower Decks. It's really cool you guys brought that back. Cirroc, what were you saying? Sorry.
No, I was going to ask you, Meg. This episode deviated a little bit from the previous episodes because there was no scene in which there was this ship that has been destroying all of the other ships, that came through and or kidnapped or whatever, the Romulans and the Klingons. That ship scene sequence normally is in at some point in the episode, either in the beginning or at some point they usually have it. And in this particular episode, it did not, it deviated from that and did not have that sequence. And my question is, we know that's going to be a climactic part of the season, of this particular season, kind of the revelation of what's going on there. Is that why you stayed away from it? Was there originally one written and was it cut out because of time? How was that?
In the versions of the scripts obviously the writer's room goes through multiple drafts. In the version of the script we got, I don't think there was any of that ship. Because I feel like the focus of episode 8 is really to bring us into the ensigns. Sorry, lieutenant, junior grades.
Junior grades.
I still they'll always be.
There always be lower decks for us. Yes.
But I thought it was. It's kind of fun to have an episode that's just about our classic four going on classic Star Trek adventures. Because and this is actually really funny because it does focus so heavily on the four. So in between each episode, I will ask the board artist, what do you most want to work on next? And episode 5, and Pathological Fallacies, was a very T'Lyn heavy episode, but one of my board artists, Jean, she did mainly the Boimler and the Shack storyline in that. So as we were wrapping up 5, I'm like, what are you hoping for in episode 8? And we hadn't received our scripts yet, so I wasn't sure what the story would be. And she was like, oh, I would like a chance to do a T'Lyn scene. Can you give me a T'Lyn scene in episode 8? And I'm like, absolutely. You can have every single T'Lyn scene in 8. And then I got the script and I'm like, I think I've let her down. But this episode ended up giving me one of my favorite moments of the 3 episodes I've done. And it was what Marcy drew in the turbo lift. There's a shot near the end of the sequence when they've been stuck in there for hours, absolutely hours. And Marcy just set this camera right up above them, and we see them all kind of lying on the floor like they're having a slumber party, like they're having a sleepover. And it was just this quiet moment kind of at the beginning of their whole adventure that just really resonated because, Lower Decks is very dialogue driven. We have a lot of great written jokes and our characters talk fast. So when you have a quiet moment, it feels more special in our show for that.
Yeah. And I also want to say that what I enjoyed about that as well was everybody's story kind of took us away from that core group. But Tindy's story, which you saved for last, was really about the core group and their story together. I really enjoyed that. I felt, that they embraced her into their community by the experience they shared together in that turbo lift. And that's when she said, "You guys are really my friends." And I think that's how they welcomed her in. And, we hear those kinds of stories at conventions, and, a lot of the fans meet up together in different chat rooms, and they feel that same kind of warmness of embrace that Tindy experienced in that turbo lift. But I was rolling because some of the stuff you mentioned, dialogue driven, the whole flashback where they were getting older and arguing with each other, that had me rolling. I think I enjoyed that. I was laughing out loud. There's just so many great moments. Tell us some of your favorite moments in this episode.
I love how messed up the broken leg is in the
Yes.
aging and de-aging cave.
He's like,
And
seriously, guys, can we just get back to fix my leg?
so Nick was the board artist who did that, and just the moment where he lifts his leg and the whole thing from the shin down falls off was just so funny to me.
Yes.
Uh, Another Easter egg that's a huge highlight is at the beginning of the Boimler and Levy scene when they're like walking through the smaller caves to get to the main one, and Boimler hears something. He goes, "What was that?" He spins his flashlight around. You may have to pause it, but there are two stalagmites in the foreground before he spins, and when his light flashes in front of the camera, one of the stalagmites is gone. And that was us indicating, like, even early on, that the Vendorians are already in these caves with them, watching them. And that's what Boimler heard when he spun around.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a deep cut.
Yeah.
No, I did not catch that. I don't think most people did.
Yeah.
Now they're all going to go
watch
back.
Every episode at least twice.
Meg, this is your final episode of this season. So, the last episode, until presumably you jump back in on season 5, but watching the fan reaction on social media or wherever, what's it been like watching the fan reaction for the season and for your episodes in particular?
So we don't get to choose, like, the directors don't sit down and say, "I want this episode, I want this episode." We are slotted in our team spot, and I knew going into the season I would get 2, 5, and 8, and I didn't know what any of the stories would be. And I feel so lucky to have gotten the Moopsie episode, which may be like a career-defining creature for me, but also this Big Talin episode that we had in the middle of the season, and then just, I don't know, having a moment celebrating our characters as ensigns from when they started, especially somebody who's just moved up to, I would say, a higher rank in animation myself. Like, I have a group of friends that I consider my ensigns that I started in animation with. We were all interns and storyboard artists at DreamWorks together like 9 years ago, and it's a group of 4 of us, and we got together this week for a dinner and a movie night because just like our core group has seen this episode, we haven't been on the same show since we started, and we see in this episode there's so many adventures that don't make it into full episodes of Lower Decks, that these characters, now that they're growing up and apart, it's really special to have this chance to get them all together and to get them talking about, like, the positive memories that we have. And our Lower Decks isn't typically like, at the end of the episode, here's the lesson that we've learned as people. But giving Tendi a speech like that in this episode, for them all to kind of crystallize that, like, we are doing a lot of different things, but that's not going to make us grow apart, and that's not going to make us different people. So I feel really lucky with the 3 episodes that I've gotten to do this season. And I definitely hope and pray that I get to come back and do more.
So do we.
Well, yeah, so do we. I mean, this has been great. We always take note of the away team, and I thought that having this away team with Rutherford, Tendi, Boimler, and Mariner, the kind of, original gang, I thought that was a great combination. Loved the line that Tendi said when she says, "We'll always be friends." I felt like that resonated with me, and I thought the line was delivered very well. And speaking of which, I also want to credit the guest voice actors who I thought did a great job. Some of which I thought I was recognizing the voices. It almost felt like I thought I heard Todd Stashwick as the Vendorian guy, but I'm completely maybe off, but I felt like it to me.
I felt like I heard Don Lewis doing double duty today too,
and I felt like I heard Don Lewis as well playing the voice of
one of the Vendorians, I think.
Yeah, and also of Fusa, the alien that impregnated Rutherford. It felt like it to me.
Scene. That scene was great to do. But yeah, I don't know all of the voice cast, but yes, definitely sometimes our main crew, particularly if we don't see bridge crew in an episode, we still they still get cast as, other voices in the series. So it's always fun to hear a different performance from, the actors that we know like them as their parts. The birth scene was a lot of fun to do because obviously it is a very, very horrible thing to happen to anyone. So there was like a balance of, okay, how long is it before it's too horrible? But like, how short is it to make it funny? So I think we tried a couple different edits and we just found out that making it shorter both made it less horrible and made it funnier that it just happened so quickly. So I don't know what the final second count is, but it's only like a matter of seconds that this happens, and it's just like so intense. And then Cave Baby episode, which I actually have a question for you. Do either of you have a standout cave episode of Star Trek? For me, it's Tom Paris and Neelix have a cave baby.
For me, it's either the Siege of AR-55 with Aaron Eisenberg and his character Nog getting his leg blown off, and that sets up the amazing episode after that. And of course, Nor the Battle to the Strong, starring Cirroc Lofton, most of the time in foamy cave sets, but also partially at Griffith Park and the Batman Cave. Good stuff there.
Yeah, I have a couple cave moments. One of them was when Picard gets stuck in the cave with Dr. Crusher. There was a moment where they get stuck in like a little cave.
Joined? 7th season.
No, first season. It was the first season. They
Arsenal of Freedom. Right,
yes,
when they fall in. I was like, how have you seen that 7th scene?
Is that the one with the flame spouts in the cave?
No, that's the one where they had those laser guided
AI things, flying around with Tasha Yar
flying around shooting them. Yes. And then the other one is where Kira and Gul Dukat get stuck in the cave and he kind of has something stuck in his ass and she has to pull it out.
Yes.
That was funny to me. I love that moment.
I've seen that memed a few times since then.
Yes.
Meg, we only have you for another couple seconds here, but I just realized I'm doing the listeners an enormous disservice. Those of us that are watching can see what's going on. People listening, we forgot to mention because we were talking about before we recorded, but everybody listening in, you owe it to yourself to watch the video because Meg is dressed up perfectly as a commander, science officer, actually a doctor, right? What's this character?
Dr. Vokra is original character, do not steal. I used to play Star Trek Adventures, the role-playing game, with a group of friends. I played a Klingon doctor named Dr. Vokra, the first Klingon doctor in the Federation. And this shirt was a gift from my parents that following Christmas. I don't think they ever watched any of the games that we played, but they care enough to buy me my character's rank in an official Star Trek shirt.
Amazing. Looks great. Looks awesome. Commander Vokra. Everybody, we got to run and hop to the other segment. So please stick around. Meg, we really appreciate you joining us. This has been a real thrill this season and today specifically. Thank you very much.
Always my pleasure. And as a little exclamation point, a fun fact, this episode, I got COVID and food poisoning at the same time. So I think
that
it's
is
even
fun.
A miracle that we finished it.
boy, what a fun.
What a rough way. That was my own cave episode, locked up in my room for a while.
Yikes.
I've been enjoying this season tremendously, Meg. This season 4 has been really a fun ride for me. And so you guys have been knocking it out of this park. And I hope to look forward to even more adventures with this Lower Decks group.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, everybody, stick around. We will be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We've got another incredible guest today. We've got the assistant director of today's episode, Jean Kang, joining us. How are you, Jean?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
First and foremost, is this your first assistant directing job?
It is, yes.
Amazing.
I was promoted on Lower Decks from storyboard artist to assistant director. But this is actually like my second promotion. I was originally a storyboard revisionist, then promoted to storyboard artist, and then storyboard artist to assistant director.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to ask very quickly, you mentioned storyboard revisionist. We saw that, I think that was in season 2. Can you tell everybody what the difference is between the revisionist and the storyboard artist and kind of how your growth within the company happened?
Yeah. So I've mostly been a storyboard artist for most of my career. Storyboard revisionist is someone, usually this is a step before becoming a storyboard artist. So storyboard revision usually is someone who when an episode gets reviewed by, say, Mike or by execs from the parent company, the director then takes the notes, figures out how they want to address the notes in the episode, and gives them to the storyboard revisionist to then implement the notes in the different sequences. So it could be something from like costume change, or it could be, can you do more things with Ta'ana playing in the spots, or we need to change the background because the location changed, so things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Meg was just telling us a little bit about, camera angles and the way that they set up shots. She was talking about the overhead turbo lift shot with the 4 main characters kind of laying down in a slumber party type moment. But I wanted to ask you, when you're storyboarding, how much of the camera angles and the actual shot is gone into that? I mean, how do you make those determinations about how close in you want to get in on something, or how far away, how much you want to reveal on things? What kind of thought process goes into like developing those things?
Yeah, so everyone's process is a little bit different. I tend to go in, like, I read the script multiple times and I first look for the emotional beats. Like, is this a moment where we really want to emphasize something the character is saying? Or is there a moment where there's a very important prop, so we need a close-up of the prop? Or do we want to emphasize the characters feeling really lonely, and we want to show them feeling small and insignificant? So maybe a wider shot would be great for that, to see that one character in this huge landscape all by themselves. So I think about it first in emotional beats and go, okay, so also like when I'm starting, I go, okay, first thing I want to do is make sure the audience knows where we are. So usually I start with a very wide establishing shot. Mm-hmm. So a big, nice, wide area to show that this is where the character is, this is where we are. And then I cut in depending on the interaction of what's going on. Usually, like, if there's an intimate dialogue between 2 characters, I try to keep the scene closer, the camera closer. And I also try to think of it as, like, say, when you have a set, there's the backdrop, and then there's the actors, and then there's the cameras. So I try to think of, like, there's a flat backdrop and then a half circle where all the cameras are, and the cameras are all facing where the actors are. And so I try to think of it that way, and then I move the camera closer or farther away depending on, like, what's going on in the scene or what I want to emphasize.
Wow. You really look at it like it's a production, a real life production, and kind of adjust accordingly. So here's a question, and forgive my ignorance, but I've never worked on an animated show before. But in my experience on live action sets, the assistant director is the hardest working person on the set, the most red-faced, slamming Red Bulls, running around, doing pretty much everything and smoking, and just they're just like, they look 80 but they're 33. So I'm assuming it's a little different in animation, but can you please let us know in animation specifically, what does the assistant director do and how does it differ from that?
So the assistant director definitely, I don't know if we're as stressed out. Depends. I guess it would depend on the production. But I would say, and I don't know if I can ever drink a Red Bull without getting a massive caffeine headache. But so I would say animation assistant directing for me has been mostly making sure that my director has everything she needs and she's able to give me sequences and notes that I can address, and that she doesn't have to sit down and walk me through, or sit down and have to draw out the notes of what she's thinking. The two of us can, because of I have a lot of experience, we can sit together and talk through the notes and talk about things that we were both thinking about. So it's okay, so we need to adjust this camera angle here, and we need to instead of her having to draw it out for me, she can just describe the shot she's thinking about. It's if we place the camera in the transporter pod so it faces the back wall, and we have this character here, and we want to show her doing an eye roll or something like that, or we have something okay, we need to change the acting because this character's emotional journey has changed. So she can just give me that note, and I can just go through the entire episode and make sure everything, all the that character's entire emotional journey has changed and his acting is reflecting that. And I also keep track of where all the files are, the most updated version of the file before it goes to edit. I sit in on all the meetings so that I make sure that we're both on the same page and she doesn't have to keep repeating information because I wasn't there. I definitely work a lot more intimately with Meg, and I'm there and present with Mark, our editor, and also Barry and Mike.
Gene, I have a question about, because I don't, in the same kind of vein as Ryan, I don't have that much knowledge about the process of animation. And this is my question. This particular show seems to have a lot of dialogue and a lot of set changes, locations, different places. Yeah. And does that make this series more difficult than producing a different animation that would be maybe slower paced and a lot less going on as far as locations and whatnot? Does that make it more difficult, or is the challenges the same? What is the process behind that comparatively?
I would say the challenge is, I feel like every animated series has a certain level of ambition. And so I've definitely worked on a lot of shows that is ambitious in terms of location changes and stuff like that. What I really appreciate about Lower Decks is that we do spend a lot of time on the Cerritos. And so we have a nice library of Cerritos locations. So we have bridge, transporter area, we have hallways, we have sick bay, the bunks, and everything like that. So everything, the best thing for us is to be able to reuse, because then we can give the designers a break and they can focus their attention on creating really cool new locations, like new alien planets, the caves for one thing. But yeah, we can, that way I feel like being able to have episodes that take place on the Cerritos, like we did for Anthological Fallacies.
Yes,
that was took place all on the Cerritos, and that was fun because I got to do the entire security team with Boimler section. So that was all mostly in that the security team room, and then out into the different hallways. So I was just able to reuse all the sets that we had without having to really create new angles or create new camera shots.
Mm-hmm.
And also I want to ask you about you mentioned the emotional journey that the characters go on.
Mhm.
Is there a group on your team that specializes in just the emotional facial expressions that we see on the characters, or is that spread out amongst the team?
I would say it's pretty spread out amongst the team. Like Mike and the writers figure out first what the journey is, and then we, as storyboard art, as a story team, we go in and as well as using camera and composition to do like the soft story of the emotional journey. We also act out all the characters. So all the actings the characters do is us listening to the dialogue and also us putting in how we react in certain emotional journeys for the characters. Like Mariner and Captain Freeman, a lot of their interaction come from my experience with my mom, who's also super ambitious, like super smart, like Captain Freeman. So as sort of the crazy daughter who likes to do art versus my super academic mom, I put a lot of that into their interactions. And so that then gets translated into designs and into our character animation team in Vancouver. So it's a big like team effort to make sure everyone is on the same journey with these characters. And it's clear for the audience to absorb at the end.
Everybody just listening in right now that isn't watching on video, you're missing out on the most beautiful, fluffy cat that just jumped up on a cat tree and is soaking up the sun. Yeah. Can you tell us the cat's name?
His name is Atom, like hydrogen atom.
And he knows he's a cute cat. He knows.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to ask you, by the way, I just assumed you are a Star Trek fan, right? And if so, what is your favorite Star Trek series besides Lower Decks?
So I am a new Star Trek fan. I actually hadn't watched a lot of Star Trek when I first joined. I watched all the movies, the Chris Pine ones. And then as I came onto the show, I've definitely been slowly watching more Star Trek. I'm still making my way through TNG because there's so much of it, but I'm really loving TNG. And like, it was, especially since I started on this show during the pandemic and I live alone. So it was like the crew of the Enterprise was trapped in my house with me. And because I was also trapped on the Enterprise with them, because where else can I go? It's space. I don't have a spacesuit. What's going to happen? Bad things. So definitely TNG, especially having the soothing voices of Patrick Stewart and the confidence in his command and the entire team being super supportive was an incredible, it was something that really helped me feel safe during a really uncertain, scary time in my life. And yeah, I'm definitely biased. I would definitely say Lower Decks is like my favorite, but TNG has been great. I'm also really enjoying Strange New Worlds. I've been really having fun watching Discovery. I'm gone caught up on all the new Trek.
Nice.
But TNG has like a special place in my heart because it made me feel very safe and very welcome.
Love it.
Yeah, well, Lower Decks has a special place in our heart. It's really, there is. It's just been so great. And also just shout out to Tawny because she does things where she says lines and says words. She hyphenates words or shortens and abbreviates them sometimes.
Mish,
but she says
mish.
The mish.
What's the mish?
The menage.
In my head canon, I was thinking that the word was mission, and she was like, "Can I say mish? I think mish sounds better. Can I say mish?" It sounds, I don't know. Maybe it was written that way. I don't know, but that was my guess.
Yeah.
All of us in the crew say baby like she does, so we're like, "Hey, baby."
Hey, baby.
And we all say no, like the way they do, like that. No. Like a very short, sharp no has translated into the rest of the crew.
Yeah, so this episode had me rolling. Quick, Boimler, take off your pants. He's like, I could have used my jacket. I mean, just too many moments in this episode that I just was rolling on. And I also like the whole, there's so many troping, there's so much troping going on in this show,
Yeah.
basically troping Star Trek with the cave, so let's trope that. And then, but there's also the whole conspiracy theories and, troping that realm right there with Levy. Just so many things. The whole drop about Wolf 359 makes an appearance in this, Q exists, Picard is in a hologram. All of these lines that you guys really insert, it's a collective effort. I know all of you, I mean all of you, working together to bring us such a good quality product, making us laugh. This Delta shift now, this is now something else that we're starting to see, right? This is a new kind of, it allows us to have the reminded of the sympathy we have for lower decks, right? And for the lower deckers. And I thought that was another kind of added little bonus to Delta shifters in this episode. But yeah, Gene, you've got a very famous name. If you just put a Billy in front of it, it's Billie Jean Kang. And
very nice.
It's perfect. But yes, thank you so much for just giving us good stuff. I really have been enjoying this season, and I'm sure there's more stuff to look forward to. We still got 2 episodes left, but I feel like this was a throwback to the camaraderie of the original Lower Deckers. That was what made it feel a little bit extra special to me.
Yeah.
Did you have that same feeling?
Oh yeah, like especially like because we're exploring the journey of people who's they're friends, but friendship is definitely something that you have to maintain and take care of. So as people grow older, friends sometimes drift apart and then they meet again, but like we're at this journey with them. They've gone through huge changes in this season by being promoted, having more responsibilities, having to be more responsible. And they even emphasize like, oh my gosh, we haven't been on an away mission together forever. And they haven't been able to tell everyone everything that's been going on. Like the whole Rutherford being like, Tana and I had a kid. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And so them being able to spend time together and be like, oh yeah, this is why we get along so well. This is why even though we fight, we're able to make up and we're able to work really good together. So I feel like this episode especially, like, maybe isn't the biggest or most bombastic episode, but in terms of really being like, this is a great character moment and character journey.
A feel good episode. You know what I mean? It makes you feel good. She's like, what? I can chant with other people.
That's our thing.
And it really feels like
cave episode.
It feels like the production crew that's making this episode almost feels like they are the personalities of the Lower Deck. They are fighting for their promotions. They're going through their adventures. They're having fun. They're building friendships. It feels like that's the camaraderie that I feel amongst the production of the Lower Decks. And that kudos to Mike McMahon for actually, a lot of stuff starts at the top. And if you set that tone of camaraderie, of feel good, of being a part of something, then the results can be tangible. We can see that as the audience. So kudos to Mike McMahon for being for being a good captain, of the Cerritos. And for everybody who's really bringing life to these characters. I really have enjoyed watching this entire show, but this season 4 has been particularly entertaining for me.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, like I feel really fortunate to be on this show, and also being on the show, I've been friends with a lot of the members of the crew for many, many years. Like Barry, I met at my very first job in animation, and we
Wow.
were very young. We were both like in our early 20s when we first met, and so we've been friends for years. Meg, I met a couple years ago at a different studio, and we've kept in touch and been friends. I was able to bring friends that I knew to work on the show with me, and like all the people who work on this show also that I have met for the first time, like Robbie and like so many other people, Bob Suarez. Everyone's been so great. Everyone's super passionate about what they do. Everyone's so talented and smart. And it's been just a really fun show to work on with a lot of kind, compassionate people who really look out for each other and really care about each other. So I feel like, yeah, definitely our journey as a crew gets reflected in the friendship and the camaraderie of the Cerritos.
You know, we love hearing that. Gene, we've only got you for another minute here, but before we go, do you have a favorite moment in this episode? Can you narrow it down to just one?
Oh my gosh. I think Rutherford giving birth is one of my favorite moments. When I first got assigned it, I was like, this is great. And Meg's just like, have fun. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much for this. This is very funny. So it was like, definitely Barry told me, he's like, don't go all House of the Dragon blood C-section on this. You know, he's like, I know you can't, but don't do it. And I was like, okay. But so I try to make it still like, you know, it's a C-section. But hey, Dr. Tana's there. She's gonna take care of everything. But I thought the entire moment was really funny because it's like, oh no, someone died. Oh no, Rutherford's pregnant. Oh no, he's giving birth now. So I thought that was really fun. So yeah, it's hard to pick, but I think that one's the one that really like comes to my mind as a really fun, funny moment for me.
Very nice. Well, Gene, we want to say, first of all, congratulations on the promotion. We cannot wait, secondarily, for the rest of season 4 and hopefully season 5 and beyond. And especially, we hope that you are involved in further seasons as well as you continue your journey, getting promoted from a lower decker to a captain yourself. And thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am very like honored to be on because I watched the show and that's why I was yelling at all my friends like, how come you don't tell me to come on? I have to find out just by watching it.
Oh my goodness, we watch your show too.
It's just too bad that Adam went in the background to upstage you with his posing that he's doing. He's got his arm laid out.
Yeah, he was stretching out. I was like, this is too cute. I can't look.
Thank you so much, Gene. Yes. Thank you so much, Gene.
Everybody at home, stick around. We've got more for you. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Boy, oh boy, this was a nutty, amazing, frantic, heartfelt episode. And here are the trivioids of the week. The lower deckers are on a mish to research moss in a cave. Beckett Mariner hates caves. Tendi mistakes a turbo lift for a cave. Lieutenant Levy always goes on and on about his conspiracy theories. Wolf 359 was a tragedy. Q exists. Picard isn't some hologram, and Voyager's EMH is. Boimler and Levy failed the Vendorian morality test at first. Lieutenant Levy is on a couple subspace forums. That was funny. Boimler takes his pants off for Rutherford. Rutherford has a cave kid with Dr. T. The only thing Dr. T'Ana hates more than engineers are babies. And Tendi didn't love peeing in the corner of a turbo lift. All right. So lots of fun, lots of laughs. We had a few non-appearance mentions. I heard Billups, heard Captain Freeman, Commander Ransom, Q, and Picard were everybody that was named but not shown in the episode, if I remember correctly. May have missed
What
one.
about the Voyager EMH?
Yeah. I literally just said him. You're right. He was definitely not in this episode, and definitely mentioned. Very good. Everybody in the comments below, if there are any other non-appearance mentions we missed, please let us know in the comments. Character that was name checked but didn't show up, so they can get some love. All right. Well, Cirroc, did you have a favorite of the 4 stories?
Geez, let's see. A favorite of the 4. I really, I thought they were kind of all funny a little bit. Probably Mariner's story. I thought that was hilarious too. Yeah, Mariner's story, arguing with the other woman about, who's gonna go over to the thing as they get older. That was funny to me.
Yeah, and I agree with Meg about that specific part where the poor guy, I forgot his name, but he has a compound fracture. They're like, just walk on it, just drag yourself, and it's getting worse and worse and older, and they're like, it's gonna heal. He's like, it's healing wrong. Then it completely falls off, which is hysterical. And then he keeps saying, can I go back for my leg? And they're like, oh, I'm over this, I'm tired, I'm bored of these long conversations. That was killer. But I was trying to figure out my favorite story. That's why I asked you to kind of stall for myself. I'm like, I don't know, because every time I would watch one of those stories, I thought, oh, this is the best one. And then when they introduced the next one, I'm like, I'm not as interested. The other one was better. And then by the end of that story, I'm like, oh, this was a really good story. And then I would be back to like, well, the next one's not going to be as good. I don't know why, but I'm like, I felt like,
I don't know why I felt that way too. Like I was getting like, oh, we're going to just keep telling stories. But then each time they did, it was hilarious.
It was weird. I don't know why. I guess it's human nature to naturally be like, you're the new story. I'm not going to like you. You're the replacement story. I like the old story with the guy's leg falling off. But then I don't know why, and then of course the new story is always just as funny and just as good. And you get invested in these too. So quickly, little 3 or 4 minute short treks,
Yeah, Rutherford says, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of weird. And so she's like, you'll be saying a lot of that. Taana just had me rolling. It was just, the stories were good. They were really good. And then when the Rutherford takes his voice translator and starts talking to the Graflax, just there were miniature twists that made the stories interesting to me. Like Levy, for example, and Boimler. Their whole thing, and Levy's having this conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory that. The Vendorians are trying to set us up. He blows up the one way they have to get out, and turns out he was right.
Yep. Conspiracy theories get a bad rap because this guy was right about everything, except, I mean, if he's saying that Q isn't real, I don't know if I can find him on that, but I'm like, we need more of this guy. I need to know, what are all the conspiracy theories in the Star Trek universe? This guy knows, and he's like, well, I'm on a couple subspace forums, that's what. Of course we know who this guy is.
He brings up
on
the
YouTube.
obelisk. He's like, I'm on a couple subspace forums, and I know about the obelisks, the Klingon civil war being started by the Vendorians. They were like, we didn't really do that one, but I like to hear it. That was just, it was funny and it was interesting. And, even the Tendi story, which I thought was going to be the least interesting story, it turned out to be the most heartfelt, kind of warm, fuzzy feeling story.
It shows where they bonded. That was nice.
Because her story was about them, and it just shows that that's how much they mean to her. I feel like the other stories were like, oh yeah, I didn't tell you about this thing. I didn't tell you about the time I got pregnant with Taana. It's like, no, I would have remembered that. It's like,
plus, where's the cave baby now? Like, who watches the cave baby? I mean,
Hey, baby, all grown up. That baby grew up
like a
born
Jem'Hadar baby. It's like
Yeah,
5
exactly.
days old and an adult. But like, are we going to see this cave baby again? Are there, now that they've introduced that in season 5? Is Rutherford going to say, "Oh, I'd love to go drinking with you guys, but it's my turn to watch the baby"? You know, we know now that the baby is the cave baby or something like that. You know, or maybe we're in Dr. Ta'ana's quarters and there's, you know, like a family portrait of her and Rutherford and cave baby.
Yes.
What's going on? Are we going to see it again?
That would be pretty interesting. That could be something they could call back at some later on point. Maybe Shax gets jealous of that. He's got beef with Rutherford now.
Right. Yeah. You got a baby with that guy first? Yeah.
Also, like in Tendy's story, they took off their shirt and made a makeshift basketball hoop. Somebody did. I think Boimler took off his uniform and made like a little makeshift, and they were balling up stuff and throwing it in the hoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot. I think Rutherford said, "That's Targ. I lost." And so they were playing instead of horse, where you get a letter every time you.
Very good. Yes.
You know, and you say, "Oh, I lost. I got a horse." They were playing Targ. And
I didn't catch that. That's really good. TARG. So it's a shorter game than horse, but still, it's more like sudden death. It's more.
Yeah, so it made me think, what is a Targ? Is it like a horse? Is it an animal?
No, they're like kind of like a warthog kind of thing. Let me see. It's like a Klingon Targ. The Klingons have them as pets sometimes, or they hunt them. I'll show you.
Okay.
Here is Worf with a Targ. So there's that, you know, there's a whole bunch.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, they kind of look like a boar or a warthog kind of thing, and they hunt them.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they have them as pets. You know, sometimes you'll hear them talking about, you know, a Klingon will say, "Oh, my pet Targ," or "We're going Targ hunting," or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it was a real animal.
Well,
okay, Klingon Targ.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny. So they, instead of horse, they say Targ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't catch that. Very good. I will say though that the Vendorian thing, I mean, I got to see more of Levy, and I had forgotten that we did see the Vendorians in the second episode, as Meg told us, but also in the animated series is what we all remember them from. And Lower Decks is giving more love to the animated series than all of the other shows do for the animated series combined. Nobody even acknowledges the animated series. No. You know, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Voyager, you know, Strange New Worlds, Discovery. Nobody, but Lower Decks is like, TAS is my jam, and they give them a lot of love. That was one of the things. But yeah, I would love to see Levy back. I don't think we've seen him before.
Seriously,
I don't think it was, but they should have Todd.
Listening to the voice. It sounded like Todd, you know, altering his voice slightly, but it did sound like Todd Stashwick's delivery, just in the way he delivers lines.
That's fun. I would love to see Todd doing voiceover for Lower Decks, because he could show off his acting chops. You know what I mean? He could be playing, you know, another version of, you know,
Shaw.
Captain Shaw's character in Picard. Or they could just be like, "Hey, we want you to act like ridiculous, be a drunk Romulan, or be a feisty or Orion, and just let him go nuts or do something, be a Tellarite." I'm sure he'd be okay with that, right?
I would like to see him be a arrogant asshole AI robot, because they love having those, you know, AI robots go crazy. He would be perfect for, like, a Captain Shaw version of AI.
An Agamus and Peanut Hamper baby.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Yes. And he just comes out. He's like, "Watch out, mom and dad. There's a new guy in town. I'm taking over."
Yes.
Pretty nice. Pretty good.
I would like that. I thought Mariner had a hilarious line when she says, "Yeah, because a bunch of rocks always beat centuries of technology."
Brilliant.
It's just beautiful.
I definitely wrote that down because, yeah, that's funny. They're like, we've been getting scanning technology for centuries, and then they're like, "Oh, we can't go through a cave. That's too much. We could go through a planet or an asteroid belt, but not a 14-foot deep cave."
It reminds me of me complaining every time I lose signal in an elevator or something. Seriously. And I'm like, seriously, we can talk to the rover on Mars, but I can't get a signal.
But in the freaking aspirin aisle of Walmart, I can't.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, what? Suddenly I gotta go walk over to lawn and garden.
Yes. Yeah, it pisses me off a little bit. I'm in the parking garage at Target and I can't get a reception, but we're talking to satellites on Jupiter. I'm like, what's going on here? But yeah, that was pretty much the embodiment of that line. A bunch of rocks always beat centuries of technology. I thought that was hilarious.
Mm-hmm. And they beat scissors.
Right. They do. The other thing I thought was great was when Mariner says, "Really? You took off your pants that fast?"
I know. He's like, "We're roommates." And he's like, "Wait, I could have just given you my jacket. Like, what's going on here?"
Yeah. Quick, Boimler, take off your pants. He was like, "Well, I'm already ahead of you."
Overall, I think that this is one of those episodes that is going to be an unheralded kind of success. Like, it's an underdog because there's no wars or battles or anything, and some people might say, "Oh, it's just like a flashback episode," but this is a fantastic episode, and I bet you it's going to age really well because it told 5 stories, 4 short stories and then the one underlying story, and each one of them is very memorable, and each one of them had very memorable moments and very funny moments, specifically like the leg falling off, or when they're eating those giant crickets with the Vendorians, and there's the big twist, and then there's the Vendorian twist at the end. So, I mean, this episode I'm very happy with, and I think it's going to be a very memorable one for years to come. But Cirroc Lofton, before we go, did you enjoy this episode?
Yeah, I did enjoy the episode. I think it was a slight break from some of the, I don't know, more serious stories. I felt like this was like an insight to their personalities a little bit more camaraderie in this. I've also liked the getting back together of the original cast members and the original group that we started following, because they started to deviate and we were seeing a lot of other characters getting storylines like T'Lyn and Billups and all of these other characters outside of the main core. And so this was a regroup of giving us the main core, getting them back together. I really enjoyed it, and I do think this episode will last as far as memory, as far as being impactful and resonating in the long term. It will be one
and you know what?
Resonates.
Now that you mention it, this is basically their one bottle episode this season, because all of the episodes had some kind of tie-in, maybe one other one might not have, but had some kind of tie-in with the overarching seasonal arc or storyline. And this one had nothing. This one is completely separate and can be plugged into any season ever, except for one thing, which is that extra half pip on their neck. But if it didn't have that, basically this episode could be put anywhere. So it's their own little bottle episode. And really what it is the deep breath before the plunge. It's episode 8, and 9 and 10 we know are going to be something big. We know that this is it. This is the culmination of everything. So this is like the breath before the plunge, I think.
Yeah, and in that particular way, I would say they are taking the Deep Space Nine approach as far
Totally.
as story building, giving us an adversary to kind of think about. And that happened around the fourth season of Deep Space Nine when we started to get the vibes of the Dominion and what was about to be coming as far as all of that storyline. So they're taking the DS9 approach when it comes to this particular season and how they're introducing their long-term strategy and their short-term kind of
yeah. And Deep
moments
Space
to
Nine
reflect
had
on.
like that last 10 episode serialized arc in season 7, or they had like all of season 7 was about Dominion Warsuit, but then they would pepper in little bottle episodes like Take Me Out to the Holosuite, and those are timeless. You remember those forever. In fact, the only reason I can really pinpoint that Take Me Out to the Holosuite was season 7 is just because Esri Dax was there. Otherwise, I'm like, was it 5 or 6 or 7? Because it's just this perfect little dropped in episode that you can watch anytime and it's not serialized.
And it feels good. The feel good aspect as well.
Totally.
This was a feel good episode.
Speaking of perfect, we've got some people that are perfect that we would like to thank today. And their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, big rugby fan, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan.
Arucan.
We've also got our buddy Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, Dequeue, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz. Is that Crewman guy? Yep. My live from Tokyo. We've got the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, our buddy, Jane Jorgensen. We've got Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfee. We've got Marsha Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Okun. All right, everybody. That's it for us. This has been a ton of fun. Very special thanks to Meg and Jean for joining us. Great stuff. Great episode. Can't wait for more. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.